Hi, everybody. This is Marley with Eerie News, and today is November 10th, 2022, Thursday, November 10th, 2022. And we are off to our first story, which is your basic ghost story. And it's out of abc6wait.com. It's titled Paranormal Activity After Death of Clinton Furniture Store Owner. This takes place in Clinton, Tennessee. This time of year, we hear all kinds of stories about haunted houses and buildings. In Clinton, those types of stories lead you to the J.R. Doherty building on Main Street. It was a furniture store and apartment complex for half a century. Today, the walls and ceilings are peeling apart. The stairs and floors creak with every step. Windows are broken, and some say this building is also the home of a ghost. Back here is where a lot of people feel people touching them. Chills. Hair on their arms, Melissa Kay said. Kay has spent a lot of time in the old J.R. Doherty furniture store building. She's had some unexplained incidents happen while inside the 85-year-old structure. Just about right here, I heard somebody come running up the stairs behind me, so I just moved to the side. I jumped to the side to let whoever was pass, but no one was there, she told the reporter. Kay said she can't explain what happened. I think there's a lot we don't know. Even though we may say it's a ghost or something, we don't know, or we don't have the equipment to understand or the intelligence to understand. Kay explained her experience as just one of many that people have reported at the old building. According to her, the paranormal is normal. A window opening on its own, lights turn on and off on their own, furniture moving around on its own. Kay said the former owner of the store, J.R. Doherty, died in his upstairs apartments 35 years ago. She has come to believe that his body was removed, but he never left. The activity has come and gone, and it seems when Craig Hansen first bought the building and was working on it, they were experiencing a lot of things. Furniture was moving around on its own. Footsteps were everywhere, but no one was in the building. She said when Mr. Hansen, the current owner of the building and the owner of the Cadence Craft and Trade store inside, moved Mr. Doherty's belongings out of his apartment and locked up the building, someone or something didn't like it. He comes down here and all the lights are on. All the alarms are going off and all this stuff was smashed and broken everywhere. And there was no sign of a break-in or anyone coming in. Kay wonders if that was J.R. Doherty and wonders if he was behind the constant opening of a closed window. I kept my eyes on it and watched the window because I wanted to see it actually open on its own. For 20 minutes watching and watching, and we got distracted and looked away for 20 seconds and looked back over and it was open, she said. She continued, somebody couldn't have run by and opened it and disappeared in that amount of time that we weren't looking. Some things in the old store, like this doll case that Kay set up just to add to the curiosity of the building. Dolls are creepy. Who doesn't like a creepy doll, she said. The one with no hair and spiders on its head. That was a special touch. But stories about the ghost of the former owner reacting to what he was seeing in his store really makes you wonder. The old building is being sold and will be remodeled. There will be a store on the lower level and apartments on the other levels. Kay says it will be interesting to see if the paranormal activity will come to an end or continue when that happens. Well, let me tell you, that's pretty to smash things around. That takes a lot of as far as ghosts, that takes a lot of energy. Okay, the next story is out of Lanx Live, and it's titled "Bacup Family Terrified After Unearthing Chilling Photograph Under Floorboards of Home." A couple have revealed their terror after unearthing a creepy picture under their floorboards in Bacup. That's spelled B-A-C-U-P. The chilling image shows a family standing in front of a Gothic-style church doorway with what appears to be a mysterious translucent shadowy figure lurking in the background. In the picture, a couple and a young boy are dressed in what appears to be 1960s style clothing. All three are smiling serenely at the camera, completely unaware of anything untoward standing right behind them. Mom Beverly Edmondson Cropper said her son Ryan and his dad Paul Stanfield found the scary image while doing renovation work. She said they unearthed it under the floorboard of Paul's house on Douglas Road, and after inquiring about it online, hastily reburied the chilling image back where they found it. But the perplexing image has prompted much speculation over just what is standing behind the unidentified happy family in the photograph. After Beverly posted about it in a local Facebook group, she said to the reporter, "There looks to be like a monk in the doorway of the photo. It's all a bit creepy." No one claimed the photo, so my son reburied it under the floorboards. Him and his dad had just moved in and they are doing the property up, so we don't know the previous owners. Yet mystery surrounds the location, date, and identity of those pictured in the chilling image. Beverly said in a post, "My son found this under some floorboards in a house he's doing up in Bacup. Spooky, it looks like a church doorway." With many residents agreeing that the image was indeed chilling, the post prompted much speculation ensued over what ghostly figures were spotted lurking behind. A man in a suit, a monk, and even a horse's head were said to have been spotted by some. One local commented, "I'd be putting it back under the floorboards." Another said, "I see a horse's head on the man's front, but on the left I see a man with a beard wearing a suit and tie. In the doorway I spotted a hooded figure that looks maybe like a monk." She continued, "It's a great photo. The man stood behind has the most creepy eyes. Reminds me of the photo once taken at the theater in the dressing room when there was another person in the frame that wasn't even in the cast." However, some locals speculated that the strange figures in the vintage photograph could in fact be the result of double exposure, a photo which arises from exposing the same photographic film twice, combining two images. But they still advised hastily putting the bone-chilling image back beneath the floorboards just in case, adding, "Spooky looking, might just be a double exposure, but wonder who the folk are." Meanwhile, another said, "I'd be putting it back where I found it," while another said, "I just put it back next to the bag of bones and forget about it." Paul Pearson of Lapis, Lancashire's Anomalous Phenomena Investigation Society said, "The photo appears to show a translucent gentleman stood in the back of what appears to be a family group. There's also a hint of a person or something in the open doorway." He continued, "Perhaps the age of the house being renovated would help. Is there a copyright stamp on the rear from a professional photographer? Or possible could there be part of a double exposure? Some photos in earlier days took several seconds or even minutes to expose, and if someone moved or walked away, they would be only partly exposed and appear as a ghost. It could also be a reuse of a frame film that had already been partially exposed by accident and then re-exposed with another photo on top. Intriguing image. It will be interesting to see if any of your readers can identify the church or even the family involved." Bacup, a town in the Rosendale borough, is no stranger to claims of paranormal activity. Among the alleged paranormal hotspots are Flowers Inn, where the Paranormal Activity Research Team of Lancashire allegedly found a ghost girl named Molly, along with several other entities, including an elderly man with a limp and a little girl who died of scarlet fever. The same investigative team descended on Bacup's Royal Theatre in April 2008 and were said to have detected numerous entities, including a woman named Kitty and a man named Jackson by the circle seating area, a doctor-like figure in reception, and other presences throughout the building. Meanwhile, a lane near Burnley Road was said to have given rise to whistling and heavy breathing, with claims of mysterious sounds emanated from a woman who died of a broken heart after losing her husband and child. Rosendale is also said to have attracted the strange going on over the year, with many reports of ghost and UFO sightings in the Ramsbottom and Rochdale Road area. Backup dad Mike Stoddard, 62, reported seeing a mysterious flying saucer-like object hovering the sky over Bacup on June 22nd, just after 10 p.m. this year. Mr. Pearson of Lancashire's Anomalous Phenomena Investigation Society said, "Regarding Rosendale's wider paranormal activity, there is lots. There have been big cat sightings across the years, notably at Haddock Top and Picnic Site on New Line. There are famous ghost reports from Bacup's Royal Court Theatre, and the previously reported odd photograph of ghostly children's legs at the former Craven Heifer, now Kashmir restaurant at Rottenstall. There are many more ghost stories about the area. The valley is also a window area for UFO reports dating back decades and featured on Stacksted's Born UFO Research, Jenny Randall's classic UFO research book, The P9 UFO Mystery. Lapis have also had historic reports from the 1990s when we were contacted by a man called David who just wanted to tell us a story as he had kept a secret for many years. David's sightings occur where Ramsbottom and Rochdale Road. Interesting, a year after his sightings, there were 3 reports made to the MOD in Rochdale, Haywood, and Bury. There is much paranormal activity in Rosendale to look back into. There have been hundreds of sightings of ghosts and other supernatural apparitions recorded in Lancashire. PsychicWorld.com collated a list of 11,700 paranormal sightings across the UK to find the nation's spookiest places. That included 355 sightings in Lancashire, which equates to around 3 supernatural encounters for every 10,000 people living in our area. The figures collated from paranormal databases tracking sightings across the UK show that ghost riding on phantom horses are the most common apparition. And if I look at this picture, I know that people can see anything, but the most apparent thing that you can see here is it looks like a man with a tie. The actual photograph is a couple with a boy standing between them. And in that space right behind the boy is what appears to be a taller man standing behind him, and he's kind of translucent. That's the most apparent one. And you could say, well, it could be a double exposure, but I'll tell you what, his image is perfectly aligned between the 2 adults and right behind the boy. In other words, he can be seen very easily. In other words, if somebody, it's almost like he was posing with a family. Like if there would have been a 4th person, this would have been the perfect spot for them to stand behind the boy so that he could be seen. And he's a lot taller. He's much taller than the man and the woman that are in the photograph. So I think that's a very interesting story. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. And this is out of Grimsby Live. And it's called A Sweet Smelling Friendly Scunthorpe Ghost Who Healed Sick Babies at Hospitals. Let's see. The tale of a benevolent, sweet-smelling ghost who was said to heal sick babies at Scunthorpe's hospital was the talk of the town after details of the local legend was that after being found among a collection of stories left behind by a veteran ghost hunter. In December 2004, the Scunthorpe Telegraph reported on a mysterious visitor to Scunthorpe General Hospital who takes the form of a long-skirted nurse smelling of violet perfume. The specter was among dozens of alleged hospital hauntings from around the country collected by the late ghost hunter Andrew Green, who passed away earlier that year. According to the legend, some staff over the years had claimed the aroma of the old-fashioned fragrance become strong just before the spirit's appearance at the hospital, which is now almost a century old, having first opened as Scunthorpe and District War Memorial Hospital in 1929. It was said that the apparition generally appears when a baby is sick, and after her visit the child recovers. When details of the supposed apparition were published, the story also featured in an article entitled Ghost of Sisters Passed in the Guardian and was later detailed in the book Mysterious Lincolnshire by Daniel Codd. However, hospital chiefs were not familiar with the ghostly nurse. At the time of the reports, a spokesperson said, "We are not aware of any apparition smelling of perfume. It's a mystery to us." The Department for Health could also shed no light on the story, having never collected statistics on haunted hospitals, saying, "We are far more concerned with helping the living." Mr. Green was reported to have said the Scunthorpe ghost was a form of electromagnetic energy, a fading echo of people whose lives were intensely stressful. However, Richard Weissman, an expert in psychology at the University of Hertfordshire, described the nature of hospitals as being the sort of place that may increase the likelihood of people claiming to have unusual experiences, especially among those who are there day and night. He said, "The majority of these experiences happen in old buildings with a tremendous sense of history, and people are aware of this. Hospitals are inherently places associated with death. Nurses in particular have to cope with life and death on a daily basis. At some level, there is a need to believe in ghosts and an afterlife, as a way of saying death is not final, as a comfort." Mr. Weissman also said shift workers are more prone to seeing or believing in strange things because they are in buildings associated with crowds and activity, but which go quiet at night and take on a more eerie aspect. He added, "When anywhere that is usually noisy goes quiet, you can usually hear the background noises you don't usually hear, the pipes, the building creaking, doors moving." The hospital officials were mystified by reports. The Scunthorpe Telegraph was soon inundated with recollections from former nurses who had heard the story. One of these, Sandra, had worked at the hospital between 1969 and 1990. She said, as a pupil nurse, part of my training took place on Ward 4, which was at the time the children's ward. I never saw the phantom, but I was informed she was a nurse who died of cancer. Once, while on night duty, the balcony doors and some of the windows flew open simultaneously with a terrific bang. The weather was rough outside, and obviously a strong gust of wind had caused this to happen. However, my fellow nurse and myself were already a bit on edge. Knowing of the ghost nurse who was supposed to haunt the ward, we dared not leave each other to go to our second breaks that night. I believe in ghosts, but never met anyone who said they had personally encountered this specter or the perfume. Perhaps this lady's a mystery to many at the hospital now, but she was known about well enough when I was there. It was, of course, the War Memorial Hospital when I first worked there. Another former nurse, Lorna, also described having not encountered the specter, but had heard the tale. She said the scent was of Parma violets, and I was told the friendly ghost was that of a former nurse who was nicknamed McPeace. A former night shift nurse also recalled her memories of the story, and that the sister's real name was Bertha. She said Mac was a lovely, lovely lady, and very tiny and slim. She always wore perfume smelling of sweet violets, and her domain was the quarter between Rodley and Cliff Wards. I believe Mac died from cancer in either 1960 or 1961, but since she died, some people have told me they can still smell the violets, especially when a child is sick. The Telegraph was later contacted by Sheila, the daughter-in-law of McPeace. She said she was not aware of the story of the ghost until she gave birth to her daughter in 1978. The nurse on duty in Ward 7 told me about the story of the long-skirted nurse who smelled of violets, and who she was supposed to be, she recalled. My mother-in-law died from breast cancer in 1961 and is buried in Brumby Cemetery, Scunthorpe. I don't really believe in ghosts unless I actually saw one, but I do know the story about my mother-in-law. One thing that all who have heard the story know, however, is McPeace was never a ghost to be afraid of when caring for a poorly child. As one nurse said at the time, strangely the sick child always recovered, so this nurse was not to be feared. In fact, during these times she was often welcomed. Interesting, huh? Alright, and now we're off to Atlas Obscura. This is titled Six Cursed Objects and the Legends Behind Them. The first one, which I've seen personally, is Robert the Doll. Sometimes a cursed object is easy to spot. Take, for instance, Robert the Doll. With his beady eyes, pitted face, and sailor suit, it's easy to understand why so many find this century-old plaything unsettling, even malevolent. But, as these six favorites show, creepy legends also attach themselves to things you would never expect: a beautiful gemstone, an everyday lighter, or a simple number. The story behind the world's most terrifying haunted doll. The children's toy has more than 100 years of mischief to answer for. Since 1994, Robert the Doll has lived at the 40s Martello Museum in Key West, Florida, but the comfortable digs, complete with humidity control and UV filtering glass, do not seem to have reformed Robert. The museum still gets regular reports of evils attributed to the doll. Robert has been blamed for car accidents, broken bones, job loss, divorce, and a cornucopia of other misfortunes. Next one, how one mathematician turned a number evil. Belphegor's prime has 31 digits. That's 13 backwards. Two sets of 13 zeros, and at its heart 666, the number of the beast. The eerie combination was popularized by author and mathematician Cliff Pickover, who is also to be credited with or blamed for the concept of vampire numbers. I'd never heard of that. The next one is the curse of the stolen amethyst. Stolen from India in the rebellion of 1857, this purple gemstone is now in the collection of the Natural History Museum in London. Despite a former owner's warning, whoever shall then open it shall first read out this warning, and then do as he pleases with the jewel. My advice to him or her is to cast it into the sea. Boy, I wonder. Next one. These medieval books are protected by horrifying curses. Book owners can be protective of their libraries. To fend off the unscrupulous, book owners in the Middle Ages used the only power they had: words. At the beginning or end of books, they would write dramatic curses threatening thieves with pain and suffering if they were to steal or damage these treasures. If anyone take away this book, let him die the death. Let him be frightened in pain. Let the falling sickness and fever seize him. Let him be broken on the wheel and hanged. Amen. I wouldn't take the book. All right. Then we're off to is this painting burning down houses? A mass-produced image of a crying boy was supposedly found untouched by fire among the ashes in several homes in England in the 1980s. The Sun, which estimated there were 30,000 copies of the seemingly harmless image, threatening their owner's safety, offered to destroy the paintings. They should see the back of any curse there may be. I've heard of this. Next one. Why we feel white lighters. The urban legend involves Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. There are all sorts of luck-related legends surrounding smoking. Some people turn one cigarette upside down in each new pack they buy, making it lucky. Others believe that lighting 3 or more cigarettes on the same match will bring on bad luck. And there's the notion that using a white lighter can bring supreme misfortune. That is a first. I'd never heard of that. I guess that's something I guess smokers would know about. Oh, let's read a little bit more on this white lighter. Let's see. This is again out of Atlas Obscura. There are all sorts of luck-related legends surrounding smoking. Some people turn one cigarette upside down in each new pack. By making it lucky, others believe that lighting 3 or more cigarettes in the same match will bring on bad luck. And then there's the notion that using a white lighter is supremely unlucky. Even today, it's not uncommon to encounter smokers who not only won't purchase white lighters, but won't use them to light things even if they belong to someone else. Some people don't even like being in the room when one is being used. But how did this legend get started in the first place? The most common origin story behind this myth is actually tied up with another popular urban legend. The so-called 27 Club includes young artists and musicians Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, and Jimi Hendrix, all who died at the age of 27. A number of superstitions revolve around the 27 Club, one of which being that those musicians, as well as a later addition to the club, Kurt Cobain, had white lighters on them when they died. They didn't. As told in a comprehensive debunking of the White Lighter 27 Club legend, the main reason this legend doesn't hold water is that white disposable lighters largely didn't exist at the time of Hendrix, Joplin, and Morrison's death. While disposable lighters weren't unheard of, the lighter the legend is mostly associated with the white big lighter, which would not be released until 1973. The the references to the myth itself, there's no mention anywhere of white lighters being present when these musicians died. In the case of Cobain, whose death was accompanied by a number of released photos from the scene, there were a couple of lighters, but neither of them were white. The people in the 27 Club certainly accelerated their own demise by their excesses, but as Aristotle said, is necessary for any tragedy, the punishment is out of all proportion to the wrongdoing, if any, says Mr. Dr. Adam Davis of the Missouri Folklore Society, who, despite never having heard of it before himself, looked into the white lighter legend at his request. So, at the core of the folk belief, attached to furtive and not altogether wholesome pleasure, is a hint of carpe diem. In other words, the white lighter legend, just like that of the 27 Club, holds a sort of mystique that makes the taboo behavior of smoking more romantic. Another, more banal origin to the myth goes that in the early days of the big lighter, they came in only 2 colors, white and black, and that the white versions more clearly showed evidence of illicit use. So when marijuana smokers would use white lighters to pack down their bowls, the lighter would get stained with ash and resin, which the cops could then use to bust them. Thus the lighters became bad luck. Problem is, big lighters seem to have come in more than just 2 colors, even in their earliest days. Certainly a yellow version, which closely resembled the color in the company classic logo as seen in this 40th anniversary press release Big put out in 2013. Whether or not there's any truth to the folklore surrounding the white lighter is not really the point, of course, because to those who believe, the legend is simply as true. References to the myth can be found in weed forums across the internet, and some businesses such as the marijuana-based subscription box service Puffer Box avoid including them. Smoking is ritualized behavior, says Davis. Ask anybody older about the prohibition against lighting 3 on a match. Inexplicable prohibitions are part of the process by which we mark things as significant. In the end, if the accepted reasoning behind the white lighter legend is all folklore, Why did white lighters get singled out at all? Why white? Why not, says Davis. Same reason a white panel van without commercial marking draws grim jokes about serial killers. It's a reminder that the ordinary, the innocuous, the unremarkable, these are the conduits and vectors of harm. Interesting. And then the last one is out of Mysterious Universe, and this is titled The Adventures of a Spanish Conquistador and a Mysterious Supernatural Entity in Texas. Throughout history, we have gone half over new horizons to explore strange new lands and shed light on the dark places of our maps. Exploration seems to be an inborn desire in our kind to chart the uncharted and to tame that which we do not understand. For centuries, these explorers have not only shone new light on exotic places, wildlife, and people, but they have also brought back stories of the bizarre that even have managed to defy explanation. One such tale comes from a Spanish conquistador in the 16th century who had many adventures in the New World and brought back a story of a supernatural, possibly alien entity terrorizing the natives of the region. In 1526, the Spanish conquistador Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca set sail for the New World. At the time it was considered to be a place full of vast, untapped riches, with the conquistador Hernando Cortez having defeated and subjugated the powerful Aztecs and reaping huge wealth from it, which had in turn caused a mad dash by Spain to move in and get rich. Thousands of conquistadors were pouring into the Americas with visions of gold and jewels dancing through their heads, and one of these was Cabeza de Vaca. In 1526, Charles V commissioned the conquistador Pamphilo de Narvaez to explore, conquer, and settle a portion of North America called La Florida, which stretched along the Gulf Coast from Mexico to Florida, and along with him was Cabeza de Vaca, who was appointed treasurer and second in command. They set off over the horizon in 1527 on 5 ships, along with 600 soldiers and colonists, with dreams of riches beyond their wildest imaginations, but dark clouds were looming, and it was to prove to be a disastrous journey. The whole expedition seemed cursed from the beginning. Problems started as soon as they arrived in Hispaniola to pick up supplies, where 150 of Narvaez's men chose to stay behind rather than continue on. After spending some time there resupplying and building a 6th ship, they traveled on to Cuba in order to obtain more horses, where they were hit by a hurricane resulting in the destruction of 2 ships and the loss of 60 men and 20 horses. After overwintering in Cuba, they continued on their journey towards La Florida, planning to stop at Havana along the way for supplies, but were thrown off course by another storm, forcing them to continue on short food, water, and other essentials. They managed to limp into what is now Tampa Bay, where they met with some tribes and got their first piece of good news, when they were told that there was a place to the north called Appalachia, which was supposedly filled with gold and food. This was more like it, and they immediately started plans to journey there. Much to Cabeza de Vaca's objections, Narvaez decided to split their forces up, with a contingent staying with the ships to go ahead and find a suitable port in Mexico, while around 300 men were assigned to travel overland. For 15 days they made their way inland, and there was no sign of any Indian settlement full of riches. In fact, when they did come across some natives, they proved to be living in poverty, and on top of that were very aggressive, attacking the conquistadors but ultimately being driven off. It would be 7 weeks before they reached their destination, a place that their Indian guides assured them was Appalachia, but which had no gold. The guides then said that the gold was really at a settlement called Aout, about 5 or 9 days away through swamps and wilderness. The expedition pushed on, and their misfortune would continue. The hot and humid mosquito-infested swamps killed off several of the expedition, and they had frequent skirmishes with hostile natives. Their food supplies dwindled, men fell sick, and when they did reach Aout, it was found to be a burned-out husk, its inhabitants having burned it down and abandoned it long ago. The Spanish decided to try to head out and find their fleet in Mexico, and along the way their food supplies ran out, and they were forced to eat their horses. They reached the coast and managed to make some crude boats to reach Mexico, but in the powerful current swept them out into the Gulf, where the 5 rafts were then separated by a hurricane and many men died, including Narvaez. The remaining men then landed on what is now Galveston Island in Texas, and their woes would continue. Almost right away their rafts were washed away by large waves, and disease, the elements, and a lack of supplies caused the men to drop like flies, while others were enslaved or killed by native tribes, and soon they were calling this place malado, or ill fate. This is where the next chapter of Cabeza de Vaca's odyssey would start. Cabeza de Vaca went off with a small band of survivors and began wandering through Texas and portions of Mexico, traveling from tribe to tribe and learning their ways. During this time, Cabeza de Vaca would become sympathetic towards the natives he encountered and adapt to their way of life. He would become known among the native people as a healer, and he is credited with performing the first surgery of the New World. His group attracted numerous native followers who regarded them as children of the sun, with vast supernatural powers to heal or to conversely destroy. It would not be until 1536 that he would finally make his way to the Spanish colony in Mexico and be reunited with his own people, telling strange tales of the natives and his adventures, which he would compile into a book called La Relación y Comentarios, the account and commentaries, which documents his journeys and gives great insight into the land and the culture of the native tribes. It is within this book that, among other pages describing wildlife, the landscape, and the ways of the natives, that one can find a rather strange report that really stands out. Cabeza de Vaca and his few remaining men heard about the tale as they were visiting a tribe in South Texas called the Coatlacan. The tribe's people claimed that some years before their village had been visited by a mysterious stranger they called Malacosa, or the Bad Thing. This entity was described as being somewhat smaller than a man, covered with hair, sporting a thick beard, and immensely strong, but despite his animalistic appearance, he was said to be able to speak, sometimes wore clothes, and was in possession of several advanced tools, such as a glinting flint knife that was said to be far sharper than anything the tribe had ever seen, as well as a blazing wand that had the power to paralyze people. An odd detail was that the entity's facial features were said to be indistinct and blurry, orbited by a strange mist. This mysterious stranger is also said to have an array of supernatural powers. The Malacosa was described as being alternately benign and malevolent. It was said to be sometimes show up at village events to simply watch from afar, while on other occasions it would raid the village and steal food. On more sinister occasions, it would supposedly use its knife to attack tribal warriors and would purportedly enter huts at night to kill tribespeople, after which it would remove certain organs or limbs with incredible precision. While the Malacosa was known to be fierce and to attack people, he would also sometimes use his power to close the wounds afterwards, or to heal the injured. Very rarely the creature would interact with tribespeople, such as one time when a villager asked where he was from, and Malacosa pointed towards a crevice in the earth and replied in their language, "From down below." This creature would apparently terrorize the village for some time before disappearing, just as suddenly and mysteriously as it had materialized. At first, Cabeza de Vaca and his men dismissed the story as nothing more than Indian myths and legends, but when some of the villagers showed them their scars, they became convinced that they were telling the truth. Considering the entity's appearance, Cabeza de Vaca thought that the stranger was a demon, perhaps even the devil himself. Researcher Brad Folsom has said of it, "The Coatecans lined up one by one to relay their encounters with the Malacosa, and to show Cabeza de Vaca where the creature had cut them with his knife. Scars covered the Indians' bodies. This physical evidence and the level of detail to the Coatecans' stories convinced Cabeza de Vaca and his companions that Malacosa was more than a phantom. There was no way that these people would or could make up such an extensive lie. Devoutly Catholic, Cabeza de Vaca became convinced that the devil had sent Malacosa. He believed what the Indians were saying, and he believed that the Indians believed what they were saying. A highly intelligent man, Cabeza de Vaca wouldn't be fooled by hokum. He heard the Indians' evidence, saw their scars, and concluded that something had attacked them 15 years ago. Being a Christian, Cabeza de Vaca used the Bible to explain Malacosa. Satan was responsible for the creature. The Coatlicans believed Malacosa to be a magical wild man creature. Cabeza de Vaca argued that he was demonic. The report is rather intriguing in that it is the only mention of the supernatural anywhere in any of his accounts of his travels. Cabeza de Vaca was not a superstitious man, and was considered to be a meticulous and a rational observer, not prone to making up tall tales or buying into them. Everything else in La Relación y Comentarios will later be found to be completely true, factual, and accurate, with archaeological and historical evidence able to explain everything else in the book except this. So, what are we to make of this story? Why would Cabeza de Vaca suddenly talk about supernatural phantoms and boogeymen in an otherwise rational and factual account? What was the Malacosa, if anything? Obviously, the tribe was able to somehow convince Cabeza de Vaca that this was real, so what could the entity have been? Some theories include that the tribe had experienced a collective hallucination. Whoa, that's some hallucination. Or that they had actually seen a shipwrecked Spaniard and that his strange appearance had caused them to explain him as some supernatural creature, while more fringe ideas are that it was a Bigfoot, an interdimensional interloper, or an alien. What is going on here? What did those natives see, and why were they able to convince this otherwise rational and implacable observer to conclude it in his otherwise level-headed and accurate depiction of life among the natives of the region? Was this a Bigfoot, an alien, an interdimensional interloper of some kind, or merely a wayward Spaniard, or even pure myth and tall tales? It is certainly an odd account that has been lost to the mist of time, and we will probably never know for sure. Great story. And I will be back with you soon with some more eerie news.